Thanks for checking out this movie review video. This is for the 2024 release Frankie Freako, and when I heard about this film coming out and that it was being done by Steven Kostanski, I was like, yeah, this is one that's going to go on the list. I definitely have to check this one out. So let me go ahead and get into it in a no spoiler way, because obviously since it's a new film, this is a no spoiler review. Like I said, it's written and directed by Steven Kostanski, who, if you're thinking, that name sounds familiar, but what has this individual done? I will tell you. Manborg, Father's Day, The Void. Love The Void. The Void is my favorite Kostanski film. Outstanding. Also did Leprechaun Returns and Psycho Goreman. So I will say that there is a certain feel from Psycho Goreman that ends up showing up in Frankie Freako. So I do think that people who have been fans of Psycho Goreman and that kind of like ridiculous, over-the-top comedic aspect to it, if you like that, I think that you will find something to enjoy in Frankie Freako. It is a little different, though. Psycho Goreman seemed like it was going a little bit harder at the adult audience, and Frankie Freako seems like it's kind of a little more in between. That, like, I actually wrote down in my notes that it literally started to feel to me like this was a movie between the PG-13 and R ratings, like just smack dab in between those two ratings. So for that reason, it does get a little confusing when you're watching the film at first if you don't know that going into it. So I do think that hopefully if you're watching this review and you're going to watch the movie, that you just kind of keep that in your mind. Because at first I was watching it and I was just like, is this a PG-13 film? Like, what is this supposed to be? So it took me a while to kind of figure it out. But once I settled into that, I was like, oh, okay. Like, I get what we're doing here. So anyway, continuing on, this is obviously a Canadian film because Steven Kostanski is a Canadian. This was a Fandango at home rental for me for $7.41 with tax. So synopsis of Frankie Freako. Like I said, this is like a horror comedy. It's like Psycho Goreman. It's very kind of frantic and ridiculous and over the top. The way I would describe it best is it kind of felt to me like a more adult version of the Cat in the Hat movie with Michael Myers. That's the best way I could describe it. So let me know if you have seen this film at this point. Do you agree with that? Go ahead and put it in the comments. But synopsis wise, it's basically about a guy who's like very reserved, very straight laced, does not swear at all, and he's just living his life. But he's a boring guy, and his wife knows that, and his coworkers know that. But he ends up seeing this ad on television, which is going back to kind of like the 90s when you were seeing those like late night ads of like, call this 1-900 number, and it's for this dude Frankie Freako, and he doesn't really know what that means, but it's alluring to him for some reason. So he ends up calling Frankie Freako, which basically ends up happening is that unleashes Frankie Freako and his two buddies, who are called Freakos. That's actually what they are. And they show up to his house and they start causing havoc. And like I said, it's kind of like a more adult version of the Cat in the Hat. But it's fun. It's interesting. But do not take anything seriously going into this film. It is just ridiculous. There's a lot of like slapstick type comedy to it. So if you're into that, basically if you're into the kind of ridiculous over the top humor of Psycho Goreman, I think you're going to find a lot to like with this. Plus, if you just like seeing some really cool practical effects, that's in this. So it is goofy from the get-go. You do know tonally where you're going with this film early on. I do think it has a little bit of a slow start. I think that the start could have been a little bit sped up to make things play out a little bit better. I legitimately did laugh at some of the jokes, which typically when I'm watching horror comedies, I'm not actually laughing out loud when I'm watching by myself. I watched this by myself, and I was laughing out loud a few times. So that means that some of this comedy really does hit super well, in my opinion. At least for me, it does. The main character is an interesting choice for a horror comedy because he's very dense and also wholesome. I feel like you don't see that a ton in those types of movies, and I did think that because of what Psycho Goreman was, that the characters would be more similar to that and a lot less like this character. But I think it's mainly about kind of having him on one side of the spectrum to start the film and then ending with him on a different in like a different area of that spectrum by the end of the film. It's about change, and that becomes it's not really a spoiler, that becomes extremely apparent in the film, like immediately when you meet who this guy is, and then you hear about the Freako line and all that stuff. When the Freakos show up, they're kind of annoying and over the top. And this is where I was still trying to kind of feel out what this film is trying to do specifically. But it's about having fun. It's about just being ridiculous and over the top. The character, like the voice acting, is very like cheesy, over the top. So once you kind of settle into that, which I eventually did, because at first I'm like, I don't really like the voice acting on this. Like the voices they chose to do are kind of ridiculous, kind of annoying, kind of too much. But once you finally settle into that, you accept the world that's being created here. I think you start to really let yourself go, have more fun with it, and eventually I did get there. It does become primarily slapstick comedy. So there are moments of other types of comedy in there, but it's a ton of that slapstick type of comedy going all the way back to, things like The Three Stooges, a little bit of that type of stuff. I think that, personally for me, Adam Brooks is in this film. Adam Brooks, I think, has been in every single Kostanski film. He's my favorite part of this film. I love his character. His character's hilarious. I kind of wish his character had an even bigger role in this film. But who knows? Maybe if this does well, there will be a Frankie Freako 2, and then we get more Adam Brooks in whatever capacity. But I really enjoyed his film. And his character, really enjoyed his character. But it's not just who the character was, it was how Adam Brooks was playing that character. I just think he always seems like he's having a great time with the characters he's playing, and he breathes so much life into them. Again, it starts to feel like it's a movie between a PG-13 and R. I think that's a very fair thing to say about the film. Seeing the different puppets that they used in this is the biggest part. It is one of the big portions of fun, I think, personally for me. Because the three Freakos that you get in the beginning who are puppets aren't the only ones you're going to necessarily end up seeing. So there's more coming, and it especially towards the end of the film, it ends up becoming, what are they going to show me next? What's the next puppet design? What's the next practical effect they're going to do? They do have some kind of like gore gags in here. Like, what's the next thing? Where are they taking this from a visual standpoint? And that made it very exciting for me personally, because I'm a big fan of seeing kind of like puppet design and seeing practical effects design and all that type of stuff in films, especially like ridiculous ones like this. I do think that the final 30 minutes was the best time of this film. It's a little bit slow coming up to the final 30 minutes, but once you hit that final 30, I think it really ramped up. It gets very exciting, it gets very engaging, and I had a blast with it from that mark until the end. Up until then, I was kind of trying to figure out, where am I gonna be headed on this film? How am I feeling about it? But then that kind of solidified it with the ending. Again, feels like an adult version of Cat in the Hat. This film does play off the temptation to be someone else and kind of be more exciting, because as human beings, we become creatures of habit and routine. And there is a tendency, especially as you get older, to just kind of like settle into your daily routines. And then you just get kind of boring. You feel like life isn't as exciting. So I think this does a really good job of kind of playing off of that, of a guy who kind of just realizes, hey, everyone thinks I'm kind of boring. I'm starting to think I'm kind of boring. Hey, what's this Frankie Freako line? It's all about partying and having fun. Maybe I should look into that, because maybe I need a little injection of partying and fun in my life. So overall I appreciate this film. I think it's a good time. I don't think it's like a phenomenal film or anything, but it accomplishes what I believe it set out to do. So out of 5 stars, half stars in play, I would give it a very solid 3-star rating. I did think about maybe going 3.5, but I don't think it's quite there for me, but know that I considered that. So officially 3-star rating for me. But this is where I'd love to hear from you. Did you love it, hate it? Are you in between on it? Go ahead and put it in the comments. We can talk about that. Always interested in hearing differing opinions on this one, because maybe there's something I missed. Maybe there's something that you can kind of enlighten me about and be like, oh, actually, yeah, that seems even better now to me. Might watch it again. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, do me a favor, hit subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I appreciate that. If you want to monetarily pitch in, you are able to do that. There are memberships linked in the description. You can look at what you get for a nominal fee each month. Also, thumbs up on the video, that always helps, and hitting the notification bell button so you know when I'm putting up a new video, because if you watch a video not long after it comes out, that helps with traction on YouTube and blah, 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 all that stuff. But anyway, thank you so much for taking your time to watch this, and until next time, keep it brutal.